In the name of God, amen. Please be seated. Thanksgiving is one of those holidays that's rich with ritual, traditions, and memories. This morning I invite you to reflect on some of your favorite memories, some of your favorite Thanksgivings, and what marked them and stay with you to this day. For some of you, your memories may be very recent. It could be that someone roused you out of bed this morning, had you get dressed and come to church, because of course we always go to church on Thanksgiving. And you're here because you love the person who asked you. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I see some sly smiles in the congregation. For some, it may be that someone shooed you out of the house because they have a responsibility for the meal and didn't want you in the kitchen and underfoot. For some, this is a hard holiday. You may be away from home, and family, and friends, and you came here to be with others. Or perhaps you're remembering someone dear to you who has gone to be with the saints, and it's hard to face an empty chair at the table. Whatever brought you here, we're so grateful that you chose to be with us. All of you who are gathered physically in the cathedral today, and all of you who are worshiping with us online. I think so often our focus is on the food that we don't take the time to remember and give God thanks for those extraordinary blessings in our lives. And even as we recognize that many of us will go to the meal today, that in and of itself is a blessing. Not everyone will be so fortunate. Today I'm so grateful for this cathedral community in which we have stepped into that space of being broad and expansive in defining family. Many of you made possible during a time of a government shutdown and the cessation of SNAP benefits, our ability to provide a month's worth of groceries to 300 families in our area. And then within the past few days, once again, this grateful and generous community came together to provide over 1,000 Thanksgiving baskets, turkey and trimmings and all, for families in our area who wouldn't have otherwise had such a meal. You've been generous, you've been grateful, you've been family in the deepest and purest sense. You see, as beautiful as this cathedral is, it's so much more than the stones and the stained glass. It is our people who are the mortar, who hold it all together and make this cathedral alive, living into its meaning and its purpose. And for that today, I give God and all of you great thanks. As we reflect a little bit on that Thanksgiving proclamation that you heard so beautifully read earlier, I think it's worth noting the context in which President Lincoln wrote that proclamation. As you noted, it was in October of 1863. In the prior year, President Lincoln's 11-year-old son, Willie, died. It was his second child to die. And he and Mrs. Lincoln were overwhelmed with their grief. It's said that Mrs. Lincoln was so filled with grief and so depressed that she was in bed for 3 weeks. And in the midst of that, President Lincoln had, in the midst of his own grief and depression, had to tend to the rest of the family and a country in the midst of the Civil War. In July of 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg happened over the course of 3 days, bloodiest battle of that time, when in a town of 2,500 people, over 150,000 troops came together. There were 50,000 casualties and over 7,000 people died. And a few short months later, President Lincoln penned that proclamation of thanksgiving to remind all of us that even in the midst of difficult and challenging times, God is present. God is with us. That God will always be with us. It's said that President Lincoln leaned heavily into his faith and said, "I've been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go." Our Canon historian, John Meacham, wrote a beautiful biography of President Lincoln, and he talks about the time after Willie died and how President Lincoln had deep and meaningful conversations with his pastor about the meaning of life and what was it all about. And Meacham reports that in his book that Lincoln affirmed his need of divine assistance and at some time thought that he might be an instrument in God's hands. Lincoln had to have leaned into his faith in those difficult times, and he helped to bring a nation together. That proclamation calls for an annual time, a day set apart, when we give God thanks for God's providence, God's blessings in our lives, that we are mindful of those in need who are hurting and suffering in our midst, and that we come together to heal the wounds of a nation. It seems to me this is an important time and an important day for us to do that too, to remember, to give thanks, to come together as community, as Cathedral family, to give a sense of God's grace and blessings in our lives. I know that can be challenging sometimes, so I want to offer something that I came across some years ago that's been helpful to me. I can't say I'm faithful to it, but I love the premise. It comes from a spiritual practice in Judaism, from the Talmud. And I first read about it in a meditation in Forward Day by Day years ago. And the author was quoting a book by Rabbi Kari Alitsky called 100 Blessings Every Day. That the Talmud requires that faithful Jews lift up 100 blessings every day. And they do it throughout the course of the day. And while that may seem like an extraordinary number, if you think about it, it's actually not that hard. It's designed to maintain a continual awareness of God and to cultivate gratitude. And we can think of the benefits. It keeps us focused on God, reduces our anxiety, helps to build humility, and it reminds us of our purpose and shared values. Cicero's purported to have said that gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. On this day, set apart for us to reflect, to remember, to give thanks, to be mindful of others in our community in need, and to pray and work toward the healing of the wounds of the nation. I invite you to be gentle on yourself, be gentle on those around you, to give God thanks, and to cultivate gratitude this day and always. Happy Thanksgiving. Amen.